Joining us now is Senator Schmitt, who started the case, Missouri v. Biden. Senator, welcome to the program. I want to say congratulations because this was a good injunction. It hasn't seen itself all the way through. But Senator, why don't you walk through this case and why you decided to start this process while you were Attorney General of Missouri?
Sure. It's great to be with you, Charlie. Well, yesterday was a big win for free speech and, a crushing defeat for censorship. It's got a hold, but it's a very, very positive injunction that, if the government wants to challenge it, they'll go to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I'm sure this case may or may not make it. Well, it may or may not make its way all the way to the Supreme Court, but this is the most important free speech case in a generation at least. And so when I was AG, we filed this lawsuit, Missouri versus Biden, that alleged that a bunch of different Biden administration agencies essentially were suppressing speech, mostly with conservatives. But you saw it play out, whether it was the origins of COVID, had an opportunity to take Anthony Fauci's deposition. So after I was elected to the Senate, before I was sworn in, we took his deposition. We can talk about that if you want to. It's just,
I would love to.
It was mind-boggling. But origins of COVID, Hunter Biden laptop theory, we took the deposition of Elvis Chan, who was the FBI agent that essentially was having monthly then weekly meetings, warning these social media giants of a Russian hack and leak operation involving the Hunter Biden laptop, even though they had the laptop in the fall of 2019. And so you saw that. You saw whether it was the efficacy of masks, transmissibility of COVID with the vaccine. All these, the myriad of these agencies colluding with big tech to censor speech in violation of the First Amendment was the reason we filed the lawsuit. And of course, if you read the judge's ruling yesterday on the injunction, it's pretty strong language. And it shouldn't be lost, Charlie, that this was sent out on the 4th of July on Independence Day. That is not an accident here. And so the judge, this is a federal judge, not me saying it, not you saying it, a federal judge saying that the case arguably involves the most massive attack against free speech in U.S. history, in comparing it to this Ministry of Truth, which of course we allege in this vast censorship enterprise. And so the government doesn't get to censor speech and they can't outsource it either. And so I was proud to bring the lawsuit, and we were able to get, pretty deep into discovery, and that evidence essentially ruled the day yesterday. And what it says is that these agencies, from the CDC to the FDA to DHS to White House officials, can no longer do this. There's an order now on the books preventing them from engaging in this kind of activity, and now in the Senate will try to hold their feet to the fire. But it's a big win.
It is. And there's other components that I want to kind of talk about here. The first of which is we do not know how deep the censorship actually goes. Thanks to Elon Musk and the Twitter files, we can almost connect two otherwise separate pieces, right? Which is the complaint that you started, Missouri v. Biden. Then we have all out here Twitter files, standing meetings of the FBI with Yoel Roth. We have communications of the FBI with Twitter. We also have Zuckerberg, who went on Joe Rogan's program, who said, oh, yeah, the FBI just kind of showed up and told us that there was going to be potentially Russian disinformation stuff and to be on the lookout for it. Very suspicious. And so, Senator, I'm going to play a piece of tape here of the spin from Pravda, CNN, where they say, oh, it's just communicating. It's just communicating. And then I want you to respond to this, why CNN is so wrong here, because this is the party line. By the way, Senator, you're really onto something with this complaint, because the ferocious response from the media on this means that we're hitting a nerve, a central nerve of something that they're awfully protective over. Play cut 2, please.
But the ruling itself is the opposite of judicial conservatism. This is one of the most aggressive, far-reaching rulings you'll ever see. What this judge is purporting to do is to micromanage, really, the day-to-day interactions between essentially the entire executive branch, all these agencies that are listed as defendants, and the leading social media companies. And in the actual temporary injunction, the judge basically says, you're not allowed, administration, to talk to the social media companies about any protected free speech except for cybersecurity threats, national security threats, criminal threats. But where's the line?
Well, the line is called the United States Constitution. Senator, your response.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Charlie. Look, it's unremarkable. Look, I'm 48. I just turned 48, so I'm Gen X. So I grew up in an era where liberals and organizations like the ACLU, right, defended the First Amendment. In free speech. And now it's conservatives that are pushing back and saying, wait a minute, we can have a robust debate. we can agree or disagree, but you don't get to censor speech. The government doesn't get to censor speech because they deem it to be, quote, misinformation or disinformation. And now you see these same legacy media outlets like the New York Times, who yesterday, had a headline saying this will prevent the government from combating disinformation. I mean, Woodward and Bernstein are dead at this point, right? Like, this is just,
yes.
They are now, the very amendment that protects their ability to write these stories and issue editorials, that protects them, they could care less because it's as long as it's sort of the content that they want or the viewpoint that they want. And they turn now into completely sort of parroting the talking points of the current regime as opposed to defending people to speak their mind. And I think it's important to take a step back, Charlie. The reason why the First Amendment is so important is the founders understood, and it's appropriate, we're just coming off the 4th of July. They knew human nature. They had seen what governments have done. Every tyrant in the history of the world has tried to aggregate power. One of the ways you do that is you quell dissent. Mm-hmm. And when the power of the government comes in and says, you can say this and you can't say that under penalty of law, or the power of the federal government doing that with these myriad of agencies, that's a very dangerous thing because the First Amendment protects that pressure release valve, right? We have a bunch of different viewpoints spread across a continent. And in order to avoid political violence, it's very important for people to feel like they can go into the town square, speak their mind, express themselves, or the virtual town square now. And so, but the Democrats, and the left want to narrow that bandwidth of what's acceptable speech. And so you see, this is the reason why political correctness, people pushing back against that. It's the same reason why they find these kinds of instances of censorship so offensive, because they understand viscerally that we need to be able to, express ourselves, and the government has no business in regulating that. But yeah, you're right. The legacy media, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, they're losing their minds because they know that they've been in on this. Whether it was in 2016, whether it was in 2020, whether it was during COVID, they've all been working closely together. They don't like that this could get broken up.
Well, and now we have evidence. Let's just take one example, Hunter Biden laptop. I lost my Twitter account during the Hunter Biden laptop thing for a week because we now can say factually and assuredly the federal government was basically saying, hey, take this down, take this down, take this down. And by the way, I was put on a Twitter blacklist, and we're even looking at legal action, Senator, just from our own personal perspective, especially with this injunction. I think will only make it more likely that we could potentially get some sort of relief from losing our social media accounts because we participated in wrongthink.